And welcome to another episode of Airy Muse. I'm the host, Sarah Crowley, and today I have my first guest, a good friend of mine. This will be an interview with Matt Cairns. He and I became acquainted while working together at Skydive Yosemite. He was, and occasionally still is, a parachute packer there. He is also now a parachute rigger. He is currently Director of Operations at Southern Yosemite Mountain Guides. Matt seems to have always had a thirst for adventure. He has a heavily hyphenated resume, embodied in many different ways over his 34 years. He rock climbs, hikes, skydives, canyoneers, is a karaoke enthusiast, extremely gifted photographer, and a seasoned hitchhiker. And that last word, hitchhiker, is going to be the focus of our talk. Mostly, we'll try not to be narrow-minded, and if this chat wants to go in different directions, we're open to that. But hitchhiking is probably going to be the focus. But, however, before we get into all of that, I do want to tip a hat to the theme of this show, airy sports, and briefly ask you, Matt, why you got interested in skydiving.
Why I got into skydiving. I mean, I feel like most people will say a similar thing, that the idea of flying is, enticing. I was always afraid of heights growing up. I was petrified of heights. I remember being very mentally scarred by an instance with my family at Cedar Point. We grew up in Ohio, so going to the roller coasters was a big thing out there.
Yeah. And
I remember one time when I was the scared one. Everybody else wanted to go on this roller coaster that was a loop, like you would go upside down and it was high and things, and I was afraid of the heights of it and being upside down, and I would literally cried not wanting to go on it, and I don't know how old I was, but I was too old to be doing that. So I'm like, I'm a little scarred by that experience, and that haunts me. So I think that conquering that fear was really rewarding. Also, I see it as human flight, as close as you can get, in a way. You're free, there's nothing holding you up, you're flying through the air like Superman, or I grew up with Dragon Ball Z, so all those characters come to mind when I saw...
What, is that a video game?
Yeah.
Okay. There's
I'm
a bit of an age gap between that and...
Yeah, I'm a 90s kid.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, Matt is 34 and I am 51, so a bit of an age gap with some of our references, but very cool. I feel that's a common lament with skydivers. They say that they were afraid of heights. It seems, you would think it would be uncommon, but it seems kind of common, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that a lot.
So it's a facing your fear kind of thing.
I hear that a lot with the tandem students, too.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
It's true. All right, so hitchhiking. Can you tell us roughly about your very first hitchhiking experience?
My first hitchhiking experience I remember very well. I was 18. And I had it was my first summer job as in a cubicle. I had a job at a computer in a desk in a cubicle for the summer. And I was losing my mind. I realized this won't work. So I quit as soon as I possibly could. And from after I quit, I bought the cheapest flight to go over the ocean, wherever that was. I wanted to go over the ocean. Cheapest flight.
Did it matter which ocean?
Nope. I just wanted to... I'd never crossed the ocean. I wanted to get over the ocean somewhere. What's the cheapest way to do that? Because I need to get far away and go for an adventure. And it was Ireland, so I flew to Dublin. And at that time, I'd never hitchhiked before. But the way I knew that I was able to travel was to spend no money on lodging or transportation. So when I arrive in Dublin, I know that I'm not going to stay in any hostels. I know that I'm not going to buy any buses or anything like that. So I start hitchhiking to get across Ireland. I had, I think, 3 weeks there, something like that. And I went from Dublin to the Cliffs of Moher, and then I actually did take a bus back. But my first hitch out, I remember it was a guy that picked me up in like a sports car, and I was very nervous because at the time I still hadn't dispelled the theory from my mind that that the world was just filled with axe murderers.
Yeah.
So that's the idea that I had grown up with, and I was always very skeptical of that, but I hadn't really tested how much you could trust a stranger.
Yes.
That first ride, I was just sitting there, petrified, not speaking, not getting to know the person, and he was driving very fast, actually. So I actually asked to get out earlier than I had planned.
Oh.
I was like, this looks good. And he let me out a little early.
Yeah.
But that was my first.
Wow. Could have been an Irish serial killer, but probably wasn't.
Probably wasn't. Yeah. Just he was just a young dude, sports car, driving a little fast, and I was just nervous about stranger danger for sure for my first one.
Yes. So let's talk about that idea a little bit. When I mentioned to my sister what my first interview was going to be, my older sister Kate, the first thing out of her mouth when I mentioned that you were a hitchhiker and that you had an very interesting Instagram handle, American Hitchhiker, which you all should check out. Matt's photography is beautiful and his photojournalism is beautiful. And we will talk about that in a little bit. But she said she was joking, but kind of not joking, playing on that stereotype, and said, but wasn't he scared of potential serial killers? And I said, well, that's why you should look at his Instagram account. It was all about dispelling that idea, right? Very intentionally. And I guess you started to do that in Ireland with your first experience?
Well, hitchhiking was just how I used to travel. And I hitchhiked for many years before I started that Instagram account. I started that Instagram account purposefully for that, for the purpose of telling stories about hitchhiking to dispel the fear around it. But
for others,
yeah, because my family, I like I said, like that's just how I traveled. I've been traveling abroad since I was 18, and I don't think I started that until I was 24, 25, maybe something like that. So it's not many years, but like those were, that's how I used to travel. And then once I realized that the idea of hitchhiking was viewed differently around the world than it was here in America, I was like, somebody needs to clear this up because it's such a bummer. Hitchhiking is a great thing, and most people, actually, I know tons and tons and tons of people who always have known that it's not a big deal.
Yes.
But there's also like the people that I grew up with, my family, and most of my hometown, most of the people I went to school with, they're from a world where they think that, oh, that's a stranger danger. There's axe murderers out there that are just looking to kill you. So yeah, that's why I started the Instagram, well into my hitchhiking days.
How many hitchhikes would you say you have done?
I knew you were going to ask me that question, and it's in the hundreds. I really couldn't tell you if it's 600 or if it's 300. I don't think it's 1,000.
Wow. I didn't realize you were in that realm of numbers.
Well, I know that I did some research leading up to this because I knew that there'd be questions like that. The one trip, that you've been asking about, the one that I like kind of embarked on to kind of to tell the stories of who picks people up in that 15-day trip. that one I had between 50 and 60 rides in that one, and I met somewhere around 100 people that I interviewed and took pictures of, and the goal of that trip was to meet as many people as I could and get as many rides as I could in 15 days. Mm-hmm. Well, I think I had 20 days, but it lasted 20 or 15, excuse me. I think I had 20 to play with and it lasted only 15.
Yeah. So you were meeting some of the drivers' families and girlfriends or boyfriends or okay.
Yep. Families, even other hitchhikers on the road, homeless people. So I was just trying to talk to as many people as I could meet. And especially the people that decided to pick you up. Those were the ones I was really interested to talk to. Mm-hmm. But a lot of great stories came out of it.
Have you mostly encountered, at least in the States, a bit of hesitancy, but they did stop after all, or are they? I've only hitchhiked maybe about 4 or 5 times in my life.
Yeah.
And all in Yosemite National Park, where I used, as you know, lived and worked, and it always seemed very safe to me and not a big deal, and it wasn't a very enduring trip. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious if I'm curious.
My landlord.
Lawnmower. Brain fart. I don't remember what I was asking.
You're wondering maybe about like the difference between America and other places?
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah, I guess so. My presumption is that Americans would be, and you said this, essentially a little more wary.
Yes.
Maybe it depends on the country.
It does. Yeah. It's very similar here as it is in England. But like some of the most hitchhiking friendly places I've been in, or I would say the top 2, Scotland and New Zealand, are extremely hitchhiker friendly. If you're going to Scotland or New Zealand, or at least at the time when I went, don't rent a car. Go hitchhike. Wow.
Okay, it's just part of the culture. It's part of the fun.
I mean, like, of course, there's always, I'm not crazy enough to say that there's no risk in hitchhiking.
Yeah.
But it's such a wonderful experience that I think is worth the risk. If you're somebody that is able to be able to set boundaries, because the person that really convinced me that this was worth giving a shot in the first place, for long trips, is a Canadian girl named Jocelyn, who you met.
Yeah.
She's hitchhiked alone across Mexico and many places that I would have thought were dangerous to hitchhike across. And if you get to know her, she'll tell you some stories where people were said inappropriate things. She's in the car with them. It might feel like a trapped sort of situation, but she's able to like take control of the situation, say like, no, that's inappropriate. I'm getting out right now. You don't get a second chance, that kind of thing. Mm. So it's like men and women have different, things to be aware of when you're meeting strangers, I would say.
Absolutely.
And that's not lost on me. But if you're in Scotland and in New Zealand, I think if you're somebody who's aware that you might have to say, no, actually, I'm going to get out right now. I don't like what you just said. If you can do that, then
you're good.
Go hitchhike in Scotland and in New Zealand. Yeah.
You have to become a New Yorker for a little bit while you're.
you just have to be able to make sure that if there's a situation that arises where it's like you have to say no, don't give them a second chance. Just go.
Mm-hmm. So, which brings us to how many scary rides have you had?
One. Just one.
Just one.
Just one. And it literally wasn't because he was a bad guy. He was just, he was, I think, under the influence of something.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't tell you what.
Yeah.
Maybe he was high or stoned or something. But he was clearly, not in his right mind. And I didn't like how he was driving. So I asked to be let out early.
And this was in the States or not?
Yes. I believe that was in the States. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but only one. So it's pretty good. And that's the thing is like, so on the subject of like, the difference between the States and other places, England and the States are very similar, where people in England, they will also pick you up and say, what the hell are you thinking? Aren't you worried you're going to get killed?
Yes. Yeah.
And the States and England are literally the only places where I've heard that.
Uh-huh.
Like other places, you know, the vast majority of people that pick you up are like, who are you? What do you do? What are you doing? Oh, so exciting.
Wow.
Like they want to get to know you. They're excited to meet a traveler. And they'll, you know, they'll tell you all about themselves. They're excited to meet someone. But in the States and in England, they'll make sure that you know that, one, don't mess with me. I've got a gun underneath my seat. You try to mess with me, I'll take you out.
Yeah.
I've heard that. and then also they'll say, that, like, aren't you worried about getting killed out there? And it's just, you know, most of the places I've hitchhiked, for the most, so I've hitchhiked in 7 different countries at least. And I think, for example, like I can't say I hitchhiked all the way across England because I kind of went like south and then cut across to Wales, and I didn't make it all the way across England. But I like to go from one end to the other. It's my goals when I go out and do this sort of thing. So there's about 7 that I have like experience in checking out the culture and seeing what the hitchhiking culture is like there.
Yeah.
Here comes Darcy.
Oh, okay. All right. Matt's girlfriend is coming in. Okay, so let's see. As a photographer, what would you say, this is kind of a cliched question for photographers, but I'm curious about your perspective on this. What would you say, what are photos able to do that words cannot do?
What are photos able to do that words cannot do? See, I'm scared to say this because you're a writer. I don't want to insult your words.
No, you're a writer too. It's I mean,
I wouldn't be. Of course, I wouldn't be.
They're different languages, though, right? Artistically, so.
Yeah, they're certainly different. I don't know what pictures can do that words cannot. But for me, some of the pictures that I've taken, I just cherish because it puts me in that place. Some were captured at a special moment, and some just capture the essence of that moment. And I don't know. I love that. I don't know how else to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it is. That's a good answer. So we've talked a little bit about this whole idea of the kindness of strangers, and what is it about the anonymity of talking to a stranger that is so wonderfully healing for us? So not even necessarily in the context of hitchhiking, but hey Darcy, sorry, brain fart again. In any situation, like if you're flying on a plane and you're next to a stranger and you feel like that, the relief of anonymity.
The relief of anonymity.
Like people, have you had that experience beyond hitchhiking too? You know, you're standing in a line or on a plane. I've certainly had that experience. And people just kind of will tell you all their secrets. And,
yes.
And you sort of kind of want to tell yours.
Yeah.
And it's...
for sure.
Because you'll never see that person again, probably, as part of it, right?
I think you put it in exactly the words I would say it. Because I've felt that the most with hitchhiking. And then in travels as well, I definitely feel that. It's... I've heard the best stories, I think, while traveling with somebody that I just met who wants to tell me something crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's maybe sometimes, with hitchhiking, sometimes being the stranger who's been introduced into their life, into their car, they know that as soon as you get out of the car, they're never going to see you again.
Right.
So that anonymity makes you a safe person to tell whatever. to let yourself be seen, and they tell you their deepest, darkest secrets, and share with you about who they really are.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons I think why, like, I tell a lot of people that if they're ever feeling depressed about humanity, just need to go hitchhiking, because you're gonna meet a lot of kind strangers who just want to help you.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna show themselves to you, because they're gonna feel safe to tell you anything, and you're just gonna feel like, wow, humanity is a lot better than the news says.
Let's pause this for 1 second. And hold on. Okay, we are back. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your Instagram account a little more. How long originally was the the Instagram Axe Murderer series supposed to be? 15 days, that was the...
Yes. I think I had 20 days to play with, and it turned into 15, because at some point I got so far away that I had to think about my turnaround time, right?
Yes.
So it's like, I'm so far away, I have to be back in 24 days. That means I need to turn around and see how long it takes me to get back. Because who knows?
Yeah.
You can get stuck at places overnight.
And how many states did you hit through that?
I don't remember the number of states. I started in Nashville, Tennessee, and I went out to Denver, Colorado, and it got really cold. So I decided to go south. Just in the spirit of hitchhiking, just kind of go wherever the rides were going, and wherever the wind blew. And right then it was
no
cold.
Agenda.
I was freezing. It was snowy. It was in like the winter. And in Colorado, I was in the winter. So like icy roads. I was like having beard sickles, and like I needed to go south. So I went south to Childress, Texas, and then Childress, Texas. I went back east because I needed to loop around, kind of not get too far away. Went to New Orleans, Louisiana, and then from New Orleans, Louisiana, went north back up to Tennessee. So I couldn't tell you how many states are in between there, but that's about the route that I went for that 15-day trip, where I was specifically seeking out stories from the people that were picking me up.
And you intentionally intended New Orleans to be a little bit of a break. That was going to be... You got together with friends, or...
I had some friends that actually lived there. Yeah, and I had some friends that lived in Denver, Colorado, too. So I had some friends that knew I was doing that, and then they reached out to me when they saw I was heading that direction. I was like, sure, yeah, I'll stay at your place for sure. Like, most of the times I was sleeping in bushes, or next to churches, or under bridges, and... rest stops, a lot of rest stops. I slept next to a vending machine at a rest stop. I remember that was one of the better ones.
And you were ready for all of that. You knew that was probably in your future when you set out on this, or not necessarily?
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Because that's how I always live. This is how I travel. That's how I did it in Ireland. I'm always looking for churches, rest stops, bridges, bushes. I just go 10 feet into the, like if I'm on if I get off an exit on the interstate and there's nothing there, I'm like, okay, perfect. I'll go 10 feet into the ditches here, into the bushes, and nobody's going to find me. Yeah.
But you look for a church first, presumably, or does it depend on the denomination?
No, it's like a church is like if I'm in a populated area, I find that there's not always there's not always people showing up to work in the morning at a church.
Okay.
I can kind of hide at a church, and I will notice if somebody comes in, there's only one, something like that. There's not very many people hanging out at church unless it's a Sunday.
Yes. Okay. All right. How do you personally deal with fear? And also, on top of that question, do you think we all feel fear to the same degree, or is that a silly presumption? Are some of us genuinely not as swayed by fear as others?
Well, I think there's rational fear, and I think there's irrational fear. you know? And I think that I don't necessarily I'm not so bold to say that I know what's rational, what's irrational. But I think I've decided on what's rational and what's irrational in terms of like some of the things I do.
For you,
Yeah.
what's acceptable for you,
Yeah,
to consider irrational or not.
Yeah. Because in irrational fear, why let that stop you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So, have you ever been accused of being an adrenaline junkie?
Yeah, recently, yeah. And I told you that, yeah. Which was offensive at the time, I guess. But it's not it's not that offensive.
Why is it offensive slightly? I mean, I find it kind of irks me as well, because I just have never identified with that title at all.
Me neither.
And yeah, never felt that was the pull for me with any adventures.
And maybe my definition of a adrenaline junkie is wrong, but like I had always associated an adrenaline junkie with somebody that takes unnecessary risks, who laughs in the face of danger, right? Will put themselves in danger. I don't see myself as somebody who does that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not actually what an adrenaline junkie is. Maybe an adrenaline junkie is safely chasing adrenaline. Maybe. And if that's the case, maybe I am. I don't know. You know.
So, Outside Magazine got wind of your Instagram plight, and how did that come about? Matt was interviewed with Outside Magazine in 2016 or 2017. Was it something totally wrong?
Can't
No.
remember. That
Okay,
sounds about right. I would have guessed it was 2016, but it's
and
around
how
the
did that come about?
I was posting on my Instagram, and you know, like the people that were following it were people from my college, people from my hometown, so not very many, and they repost it and share with their friends, and people were excited about the idea. They wanted me to keep doing this, and there was a moment where I thought, like, there's enough people that like this that I could just keep doing it. And people were asking for me to keep doing it and to make more of these stories.
Yeah.
And essentially that was it. Like, when I got back, somebody asked me and they wanted to talk to me about it.
Did you contemplate taking it beyond the 15 days?
Well,
like that idea?
I only had that much time at the time. I've traveled for, I've hitchhiked for, 10 months? I did like a 10-month hitchhiking, like that's how I lived. I hitchhiked around, I worked for a very short time, and like, I didn't have a vehicle, so I hitchhiked around everywhere for about 10 months, and that's the longest time I did. But that was before I was interested in, that's before I was telling the stories of people who picked me up. So, had I considered doing longer, I thought about doing more trips, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to go hitchhike, take pictures while you're hitchhiking, interview them, and then at the rest stop where you're hiding, pull out your iPad and edit a portrait that I took of them. And then to like tell the story, that took a lot of work, and I loved it. Like, I had a lot of fun. Those stories and pictures were, some of my creative outlets that I'm most proud of. But it takes a lot of work, and you don't make any money doing that. So unfortunately, I can't make a living doing that.
Yes. All right. I have a couple more questions, and then maybe we'll wrap this up. But regarding the topic and the word adventure, do you think that all humans are wired for it to some degree, even though they might define what that is differently? Or what do you think? Are some just not wired that way and they're okay with a pretty sedentary life? We seem to need a bit of it to be happy.
I think adventure is in the blood of every human. Does every human seek it out? I don't know. I wonder if I mean, of course, adventure means different things to different people, for sure. Yeah, you said that. Yeah, I think that it's a human feature and something that's good for us that we should seek out whether we do or not.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, final question. Do you have any future goals you'd be willing to share with us?
Future goals?
Adventure-wise or career-wise, whatever you like.
Oof. I am hot in pursuit of becoming a landowner in Mariposa, California. That's what every fiber of my being is working towards every day.
Yes.
For the past 3-4 years, something like that. So that's truly what I'm working on. But in terms of adventure and things like that, I can't wait to travel abroad again. It's been many years. And someday, I'm very interested in paragliding. I have to do that before I die.
So I also have to ask you, I meant to ask you this earlier, what's your favorite, you've been all over the world, favorite country, if you had to choose one or two?
Favorite country? I mean, apples to oranges. There's great things about each one. Like I said, I mentioned Scotland before because it's such a friendly country, which is why it's such a good place to hitchhike in. But they had bothies. The bothy system up there is amazing.
Tell us what that is. I remember you defined it. Maybe everybody knew, but I never had heard of it. Maybe everybody knows about it, but
it's a rainy place to go hiking through the mountains, and they have these derelict buildings that the Bothy Association went and just reclaimed and made sturdy. They made them so that the roofs are sound, the walls are sound. They're completely empty. You don't need to pay anything to use them at night. Somebody has to tell you where they are because they're not. You can't, at the time at least, you couldn't find the locations online. Somebody'd say there's Bothy right about here on your map. and it's free and you can show up and there might be other travelers staying there for the night, and that's why it's a beautiful thing. It's you meet people from other countries staying there out of the rain, and it's free, and somebody went and reclaimed this old lighthouse or old shepherd's cabin.
Ooh, lighthouses, really?
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that would never happen in America.
Yeah.
I loved that about Scotland, and there were so many things about that ethos of just community, people, that I loved about Scotland.
Why would it never happen in America? What is it about our country?
We're obsessed with private property. Everything's private out here. And we have the public lands and things, and that's one of the, America's greatest idea, right? But it's that's west of the Mississippi, and it's just I don't know much of it. It's very inaccessible east of the Mississippi, and I know in America there's, like I said, there's just that ethos in hitchhiking too, where stranger danger. What are you doing on my lawn? The suspicion here.
That's true.
Out there, they're just a stranger. Come in, have some tea.
Yeah. But it varies through the country, right? Midwesterners, I think, are rightly stereotyped as being a little friendlier and less edgy, and
I'm sure that there's some unfriendly Scots out there, but I didn't meet a single one.
Any?
No, I didn't meet a single one. Yeah. Australia is also an amazing place. You can make a lot of money in Australia very easily. And it's a traveler's good traveler's culture. They'll somebody who's hitchhiking around and wants to travel around and see the world. You can walk up and apply for a job for 2 weeks. Say, I'll be available for 2 weeks to help you out. Is that okay if I leave in 2 weeks? Yeah, you're hired. Get over here.
Really?
Yeah. That's another thing you wouldn't find out here, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they actually pay pretty decently. I mean, people will say that it's that it evens out with the cost of living, but I felt like if you just avoided beer and cigarettes, and if you weren't renting, that yeah, you're making money fast in Australia.
How long were you in Australia?
I was there for roughly 6 months.
Okay. Well, very cool, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me today with this. It became a little more of a conversation than I intended. I didn't mean to butt in so much, but interview. And everyone should check out Matt's Instagram handle, American Hitchhiker. It is wonderful. What we are specifically talking about is at the very beginning of it, right? You do have to scroll the time period.
Yeah, all the way to the beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
And there's more hitchhiking on my old Instagram, mattcairnsphotography. Cairns spelled Cairns.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of the podcast. Can't wait to hear more about Millie Starbeam. It was an honor and a pleasure to be your first interviewee.
Thank you so much, Matt. All right. Until next time.